What are 3 interesting factors about yourself?
Before joining the police, I was a firefighter, which I did for 10 years. One of my hobbies is to attend movie conventions, and for a few years I went in costume in something that's called cosplay, a highlight of which was at a Star Wars convention a few years ago. I was picked from the audience to appear on stage alongside Ray Park, who played Darth Maul in The Phantom Menace. Another hobby of mine was martial arts. Having trained in several styles for many years, I've achieved black belts in 2 different styles.
When did you first realise you wanted to be a writer?
Started writing really by chance. In about 2005, I started writing a contemporary horror story which was never completed. This unfinished manuscript has probably been lost forever, and I started writing again about 4 years ago following a conversation with a friend about this unfinished book, and they suggested that I started afresh, and it's just carried on from there.
What inspired you to write your first book?
Apart from the conversation I had, I was off sick following surgery for carpal tunnel syndrome, but the inspiration for the story was a true series of events that happened to me as a police officer, and this became the wider project, which was my first book.
Was the character inspired by a real person? If so, who?
The character is purely fictional, but the events that led to his downfall were in some way based on true events that happened to both myself and to colleagues.
When did you write your first book, and how old were you?
The first book I started writing about 4 years ago, so 2016. That made me 42 years old.
What do you like to do when you're not writing?
I'm a big sci-fi and movie buff, so when I'm not writing, I enjoy watching movies and I enjoy attending movie conventions.
What was one of the most surprising things you learned in creating your books?
One thing that has been very apparent to me is how much emotion just a few lines of text can have for the reader. You get emotion from a movie, but it's nothing compared to what can be generated in the mind as they read a page from a book.
How many books have you written?
I'm currently, at the time of this interview, working on my 11th book. So I have 10 in print, soon to be 11.
What do you think makes a good story?
A story has to obviously have a beginning, a middle and an end, but the beginning of the book isn't necessarily the beginning of the story. But what is more important than the story is a character whose point of view the reader follows through the book, and the character has to be someone the reader can empathise with and relate to, and be someone that they are prepared to turn 300 plus pages to find out what happens to them.
As a child, what did you want to do when you grew up?
I think my earliest job aspiration was to be a movie stuntman. I remember when I was very small, I used to make jumps for my BMX and to deliberately fall off my bike and consider it all practice for when I grew up.
Do you hide any secrets in your books that only a few people will find?
There's a lot about myself in each story, and there are quite a few anecdotes and quips and quotes that I have come out with. So those who know me, who read my books, should have an extra smile when they come across these, knowing that they've heard them from me directly.
How long did it take you to write your first novel?
The first completed novel, which was written whilst I was off sick recovering from surgery, the first draft was completed in about 10 days. It was over 300 pages, and I was like a man possessed, writing literally from sunrise to sunset each day until the story was complete.
What advice would you give to aspiring authors?
Again, as mentioned, it's all about the characters. You can have a truly amazing story, but if you haven't got the protagonist and the point of view leading you through the story, no one is going to be turning the pages. So it's all about the character and wanting to find out what happens to them.